Hola amigos, bien ok. Y saludos desde Medellín. Entonces hoy es día 24, day 24. Y sí, otro día con más verbos. Sí, es más complicado. En verdad, es complicado. Um, entonces, el tema de hoy es qué puedes hacer con esta forma de estudios que esta es muy complicado y un poco confundida, a bit confusing. Tengo algunos pensamientos con esto. Listo. So today, day 24, and much like the last 3 or 4 days, because at this point in Barbara's marvellous book, we're into some quite subtle and quite complicated forms of expression, particularly of the past. So lots of the things I'm studying are quite similar. There's a very similar expression. I have, I had. It's very similar forms of the past. And they're easy to get confused. So what to do? Well, the first point, which is a useful one and a very good recommendation for Barbara's book, is there are lots of examples in the sentences explaining all of these points. So you can just see by repetition of context, of examples of how these sentences, these forms are actually used, very helpful. What I've tried to do as I've gone through these various chapters is to look for examples amongst the sentences I'm reading that are the kind of phrases I would actually use. So okay, like yeah, that one I could use, or yeah, that one looks useful. That's one I could add into one of my dialogues. So I'm trying to be more selective again, as I said before, because there's almost too much information. So it's quite good to reduce it down a bit and get a few very workable or very obviously useful example sentences that you can confidently repeat because you know they're the type of thing that you would normally say in some of the dialogues you're preparing for. So that helps a bit. The other thing to say is, although obviously we are trying to get to a point where we understand all of this and we can speak fluidly and without any problem. But in the shorter term, these occasional points of confusion should not stop us from starting conversations. So my general suggestion is this. Keep practicing your key dialogues. Keep practicing those. Because as we continue with them, as the repetitions increase, we're going to get more fluid with those. It'll be much easier at the start of the dialogue. Now, once we're in our conversation with our native speaker, remember that if you really can't think, or you have a blank and you just can't think of what's the correct form of that verb in this tense I want to express, you can always just give the infinitive of the verb. Because really, at that level, because we're already in a context that's understood between you and the other person you're talking to, the fact that you might not conjugate the verb completely correctly shouldn't cause too much problems. Shouldn't cause too many problems really, because the native speaker will, at some level, like a subconscious level, will automatically correct what he actually heard to what he thinks he should have heard, and will offer you a correction, generally. So don't be afraid to make the mistake. So clearly, as we carry on with this, we are going to get a lot better because we're seeing loads more examples of good ways to use the vocabulary and the verbs. Yeah? Now, some of these sentences are obviously written just to illustrate the point grammatically, so they may not be words that or sentences you would normally use, but that's okay. Somewhere in amongst them, there are phrases that are useful. I think the best plan really is to be selective, pick the ones that are going to be most helpful to you for the particular dialogues you're practicing for, and get better at those, because that will lead you into the conversations, and eventually, because you've been reading so much, your general vocabulary, whether you realise it really or not, is going to be a lot better. So you're going to understand more of the words you're going to be hearing in the conversations. So bit by bit, it's going to improve. Now I say that confidently, but I know just at this moment my head is spinning with different versions of verbs and conjugations. So I'm having a rest now for the day. Tomorrow I'm going to go back and unpack some of these chapters I've just been reading through, and then carry on again. So it seems to be going in waves. That would be a good way to describe it. It seems to be going in waves. So we have a very intense period of reading lots of stuff, taking lots of notes, and it's lots of information. Some ways perhaps a bit too much, but an awful lot of information. So I try and take a rest a bit from that, sit back for a day or so, go back to it and try and unpack that information, reduce it down to very useful phrases, and revise those, and don't worry too much about the other stuff you've discarded, because you have read it, so you are really, you've had contact with it, but perhaps it's not the most useful at this time. So there's a bit of that, a bit more of a filter, and trying to keep a bit more relevant the information you're using, to help you keep practicing, and say, like the key dialogues, which is going to help you get the confidence in how you sound. But particularly, and again I thank Barbara for the structure of her book, because it's very useful, it's a very good example of how to do it. There's loads of example sentences which are very useful. It's not just words in isolation, it's actual sentences, and by reading them out loud I've had a lot of practice for me to listen and hear how I sound, and I hope that has now improved quite a bit. So there we go. Perhaps a bit too wordy today, but I hope you forgive me. I've just come away from a lot of time reading the books there. So generally, look at all the information you've got. Again, try and filter it down. Try and find the most useful key points from the stuff you have been reading. And don't be afraid to make mistakes in the conversations you're having, because I promise you, you're better understood than you think. There we go. That's it for today. Let me know what you think in the comments. Déjame saber en los comentarios. And from lovely sunny Medellin, feliz noche, y hasta pronto. See you soon. Cheerio for now.